Welcome back to Studio Atlanta. I am Daniel Martin, and today I want to talk about things you need to do and a few things you don't need to do before you photograph your first wedding. The first thing I would recommend is joining the Professional Photographers of America. I've been a member of them for over 20 years. I did shoot my first wedding in 1985, and I've been doing this for 37 years, but joining the PPA is a good thing to do. You need that. They will provide you wedding insurance in case something goes wrong at the wedding. They provide insurance for your equipment in case something happens to your equipment. Joining the PPA also sets you up with other photographers that are doing the same thing you are. It's a good way to meet, mingle. They also have trade shows every year where you can go and do hands-on, see new cameras, see everything you need to see, backgrounds, all the newest, latest technology. It's a really cool thing to be a member of the PPA. I will leave a link down at the bottom so that you can see that link. Now, the next thing you're going to need to do is have a contract. You need to state specifically what the bride and groom are getting in the package that you're selling them, and that way there's no confusion afterwards. Everything is written down. They have a copy. You have a copy. Sometimes they might have a question about what the contract says. That's fine. Go over it with them. Make sure that everybody understands what's in the contract. That way there's absolutely no confusion later as to what somebody expected. Another thing you're going to need to do before your wedding is meet your bride and groom. Now, I understand because we do some weddings that are out of town. It's not always possible to do a bridal portrait or engagement portrait or even meet them for dinner. But you can spend that time on the phone if you need to with them. You need communication. It doesn't really matter how you communicate. Communication is what's important. They have to know what your vision for their wedding is. Even though it's their wedding, you still have a style, and you want to make sure that your style works with their style, works with what they want. So it's very important to have communication. Can't say enough. They will need to know what you're planning for that day, and you need to draw out a timeline for them. Say if the wedding starts at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you need to be able to back that time up to say 11:30 you're going to start with the guys, at 12 you're going to start with the guys, however you do your timeline, but you need to have a timeline. It is also very important that you give the bride and groom a shot list. Now, the shot list that you give them is probably going to have a basic things in there like picture of the bride full length, picture of the wedding cake. Well, I always tell my bride and groom, don't worry about that kind of stuff. I've been doing this 37 years. I'm going to get a picture of the bride, and I'm going to get a picture of the cake. What the shot list is for is we want to know people that are coming from out of town, people we would not know, friends from school, friends from college, relatives they don't get to see very often from out of town. Have them list those people and have them list them by name. That way the assistant that you've got with you can have them ready, and usually those kind of shots are between the ceremony and the reception. Sometimes if you're running short on time, you can do them at the reception, but I try to make those done right after the ceremony, but that's completely up to you. But that needs to be on your timeline. And you need to go over this timeline with your bride and groom, and you need to specify to them those start times. That's the time we're going to start. If they're not ready at 11:30, those are pictures they may miss because you can't lay out a timeline and have everything exactly on the timeline and then be 30 minutes late. That's 30 minutes of pictures they're going to lose. And what they're paying you hourly, believe me, they won't want to lose that. So you've got to make a point. Time is of the most important. Now, when you get to your equipment, you need to have multiple backups. Don't go to a wedding with just one camera and one lens. When I go to a wedding, I've got 4 or 5 cameras with me and probably got 7 or 8 lenses. You're also going to need backup memory cards in case a memory card fails. You're going to need backup batteries. Some of the flashes that I use recharge AA's. You need to not only have all your batteries charged before you get to the wedding, but you need to have the charger there with you also, because if I pull out some of my Interloop Pros and put them into the flash because the old ones died, I need to have the new ones recharged, and the ones I just took out of the flash need to start charging again. So if I need them again, they'll be ready. You need to have backup memory cards, backup batteries, backup camera bodies, backup lenses. When you're downloading their pictures, keep the pictures on the card. Do not delete the wedding pictures at the wedding once they're downloaded into your computer. Keep them on the card, keep them backed up on the computer, and then 2 or 3 times, especially before you leave the wedding, back up from your computer to an external hard drive. And I highly recommend SanDisk for those hard drives. I'm not paid by SanDisk, but they are one of the best hard drives that you can get for external backup. They make one called Rugged that's really good. And believe me, you want a backup of everything you've got. So when we leave a wedding, we have their pictures on the cards, we have their pictures on the computer, and we have their pictures on our hard drive, on the external hard drive, sorry. And if we're somewhere where we have a good internet reception, sometimes I'll go ahead and load them into the cloud. So You just can't have too many backups. You can't go wrong. You may not need it. You may not need it for 3 years, 4 years. Whenever you do need it, though, you're going to need it. Another thing that's very important at your wedding is that you, as the photographer, stay in control of the wedding. Now, I don't mean you have to be a jerk to everybody, but if there's a wedding coordinator there, you need to tell her, this is my plan. Show her your timeline. And most of the time, she will be, that's fine. Most of the time, what she's going to do is she's just going to run the ceremony. She's going to tell them when to walk down the aisle, where to stand. They've already practiced this the night before, usually. So that pretty much leaves you in charge of the wedding. And take your assistant or second shooter, and once you're done with the ceremony, when it comes time to get the big family pictures, because after the ceremony, we start with the large groups first, both families. Then we'll go to wedding party on down the line until we get down to just the bride and groom. Then we have everybody leave while we're doing the bride and groom, and we try to keep them for 15 to 20 minutes, because these, to me, are the most important shots you're going to get at a wedding, is the bride and groom. And you really need to get those. Now, I have talked about in previous videos doing a non-traditional wedding where the bride and groom see each other before the wedding. That's another time that you can spend 15, 20 minutes with the bride and groom, just getting pictures of them, whichever way you need to do it. But you got to have at least 15 to 20 minutes with the bride and groom. I mentioned it a while ago, but you definitely need an assistant. A second shooter. My assistant is a second shooter, so she's fantastic. She's been doing this as long as I have with me, so she's fantastic. But don't try to go to a wedding by yourself the first time. I don't even like to go to weddings by myself now. I've been doing it for 37 years. Take an assistant. If you don't have anybody that knows photography, just have somebody there. Hey, run, get me this lens or get me the tripod. You just need some help. And believe me, you're going to need it. Now, the wedding day is not a day. If this is your first wedding, a wedding is not the time for you to try to figure out your shutter speed and the aperture, okay, your ISO. If you don't know the exposure triangle, if you don't know ISO, if you don't know your f-stop, if you don't know your shutter speed, if you can't look outside and guess within a stop of where you need to be, you don't need to shoot a wedding yet. You need to at least have gone to a few weddings as a second shooter, or at least as an assistant to help someone else. You don't have time to figure out which shutter speed and which f-stop to use. All that is secondary. When you're at a wedding, 80 to 90% of everything you're doing is customer service. The photography is already in your head. You already know this. It's not the time to learn something new. You got to have that plan. In fact, when I'm shooting a big, large group after the ceremony, and I'm thinking, I see a beautiful spot over there, the bride and groom, I've already got in my head, I'm going to be shooting them over there, and I'm pretty close to what I'm going to shoot them with the f-stop and shutter speed and ISO just by looking at it. So the weddings are not a time to practice anything, and they're not a time to learn anything. You have to know all this before the wedding, or you will end up in deep trouble. You can get sued. All kinds of things can go wrong, ruin your reputation. Never, ever, ever go to a wedding when you are not fully confident of your photography abilities, because that's your abilities at that wedding. That's so far down the list of what people expect of you at the time. They expect you to work magic, and you got to know how to do that magic in your head with your camera. It's not the time to practice. If you don't understand any of that stuff I just said, do not book a wedding just yet. You must practice and you must be prepared. Well, this is just the first video that we're posting about things to do and some things not to do at your first wedding. We will be making some more posts on this additionally, but today was pretty basic. But it's just important that you listen to the things that I said and make sure that you can check the box by everything that I just said earlier in this video. And if you can check all those boxes, you're getting really close to shooting your first wedding. It can be very stressful, but it can also be a whole lot of fun. So we want you to enjoy the day with the bride and groom. You've got to have that. You got to be happy. It's their big day, and they're letting you take part in their big day, and you need to enjoy it. And if you're sweating bullets behind the camera because you can't figure out your shutter speed and your f-stop, it ain't going to work. Also, if you're shooting pictures of a bride and groom, and I had a photographer do this years ago, great photographer, but he was a little bit stressed, and he was trying to get this picture of the bride, and he did it over and over about 7 times for the same shot. And I told him later, I said, you can't do that. I said, if you don't get it right after the second or third shot, just move on and try to get it later, because what you're going to do is the bride's going to lose confidence in your ability, but still be thinking, what is he doing? Why is he having to shoot this shot 8 times? So just move on. If you didn't get the shot just right, don't worry about it. Keep moving. Get it later. But you must keep the confidence of the bride and groom to know that they hired the right photographer in you. So again, I stress, if you don't understand photography extremely well, weddings are not yet for you. Thanks for listening today. I'm Daniel Martin. We will be doing extra videos on how to do a wedding coming up soon. But if you would, please take a moment, hit that subscribe button down at the bottom and hit a like. My email will be at the bottom also if you'd like to send me a question. Appreciate it, and y'all have a good day.